Well, Vandy had the dream start. So what happened?
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Vandy closes the regular season out with a 6-6 record with a disappointing loss to the Vols. Why is it disappointing? Well, Vandy got off to a dream start again, up 14-0 before Tennessee could blink, but Vandy allowed them to get back in it. And so, honestly, what did we learn from this? Well, here's the thing. We learned that Vandy's going to fight you. Vandy's going to be competitive, right? That's part of it. Right. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly of Saturday's game. OK, here we're going to start because I'm a good news type of guy. We're going to start with good. All right. Here's the good. All right. The start of the game. Again, I said we got off to a dream start. All right. The bad, offensive game plan. The ugly, covering Vol receivers. If you were at the game, especially, you know. All right. But here's the thing with this team. Here's the thing that I love about this team. OK, and it's frustrating and disappointing all in the same because they couldn't, like the last 3 games, they couldn't finish this out against LSU, against South Carolina, against Tennessee. All right, 3 games that they were off to really good starts in. They fought all the way through, right? I think South Carolina was the only one they let really get away from them. But they fought and stayed in all of these games. So the resilience, I think, is there. I think you're seeing a culture shift within this team of like they start to kind of believe in themselves, right? And the starts they got off to in all of these games, except maybe the South Carolina game wasn't as great of a start offensively, but defensively, I thought it was a pretty good start until the wheels fell off. Against LSU, you get off to a dream start on the road. You hit a shot play. You get a 3-and-out and hit a shot play on your first play from scrimmage. That's a dream start that you want to get to against a team that had been reeling up until that point. And then against Tennessee, you return the opening kickoff back, and then you immediately get a fumble on Tennessee's first possession. You take that down, punch it in. I think in 5 plays, and then you're up 14-0, and Tennessee's only had the ball like 2 plays, and you're sitting there going, okay, this is some pretty positive stuff. Like we have some momentum, we have a chance. This is a team that's also, it's cold, it's a weird environment. They're not really like used to this happening, right? Arkansas did this to them a little bit, and they folded. It was a road game, so you had to have thought, like everybody was thinking, hey, this is the dream start we want to get off to, right? And that was the thing early on that, Vandy needed to start faster. And in the games they won, they did start fast. Against Missouri, they didn't. Against Georgia State, they never really started. And then against Virginia Tech, they started blazingly fast, right? Against Auburn, they started kind of slow, but they ended up winning that game. Against Kentucky, they started fast, faded, and then finished strong. But it was one of those things where, this game, the emotions are high. You've got this really big rival that you have in Tennessee, right? Even going back to last week against LSU, you're on the road. You're in an environment like that where you can really silence the crowd and make them want to quit. And you get off to the start that allows you to do that. That's one of those things where when you're trying to get over a hump as a program, like you have to eclipse these little things, right? And I think when people look at the big picture, they'll see, and I think oftentimes they should see, but people don't often see that there's little hurdles and milestones that keep you from getting there, right? So let's look at last year compared to this year, okay? What did Vandy ever get off to a start like this in any game last year? That was a Division I opponent. No. All right. They didn't even come close to winning 6 games. Okay. This, for that, I think you have to clear that milestone. Okay. Defensively. All right. were they able to create takeaways? I think they created 3 yesterday. Now, fortunately, when we get into our next point here, fortunately for Tennessee, they were able to survive those turnovers, but they were able to take the ball away. This defense, the resilience of this defense, they fight you rep and rep and rep and rep, right? The fight is there, the effort is there, the want to, the confidence, the belief is there. I thought that maybe, most of the game, I think at some point Tennessee broke our will, but I think that for the most part, until that happened, which was like midway through the fourth quarter, I thought the game had started kind of declining for Vandy, but Tennessee that's what they do. They overwhelm you, and Tennessee did a good job of that. But, I think that throughout the season, if you look at it as a whole, but from this singular game, I thought the resilience to stay in it as long as they could against a team that good, that dominant, a team that is bound for the playoffs. Now they're getting in. It's just a matter of where they're going to be seated and who they're going to be playing against. They're in. I think unless some crazy stuff happens, which I don't know how much more crazy stuff can happen in this college football season, but hey, we got one more week before the playoff seedings are determined, and this thing is I'm sure there's going to be more twists and turns because Miami lost, Ohio State lost, which I don't know what that does for them. Who else lost? A&M lost, which I think they're likely out now. That they lost. I'm trying to think of who else lost. Clemson lost, but they're in the ACC title game, so they still have a chance to get in with an automatic berth if they can beat SMU. SMU was not once considered in, but now they're in the running for an automatic berth or possibly something along those lines. So, I mean, just the resilience of this crazy season, nonetheless, for Vandy with a depleted roster. Yes, I'll say it. The roster lacks depth. We know that. Right, they were able to hit the portal. They were able to develop as far as they could, but with Clark Lee being on a coming into the year being essentially on the hot seat and no one knowing if he was going to be here long term, no one's going to jump on board that, and they weren't spending much NIL because he didn't have any support in that realm. And who would, after coming off of that 2-10 season, who would have supported that to a great deal? I mean, he got what he needed, like the minimum of what he needed, but nobody was going to jump on that. And so, again, you don't have as much depth as you need to play in this league and to hang as long as they've been able to hang throughout the brutal schedule, the brutal middle part of this schedule that they had to face was awesome. And that resilience showed up in this game. They were able to fight and fight and fight. They went toe-to-toe with Tennessee, gave Tennessee their best shot. Unfortunately, that wasn't quite good enough. But again, the dream start, I think, signals also I think it signals that they, that coming into this game, they believe in themselves. Because I think Vandy teams in the past coming into this game, Tennessee's a playoff team. If last year's Vandy team would have came into this game with Tennessee where they're at, Tennessee's a playoff team. They're all but a shoe in. They've got behemoths along the offensive line and defensive lines. They've got speed all over the place. One of the best backs in the entire conference in the backfield. I mean, they're just freaking loaded wall to wall on both sides of the ball. I don't know that this Vandy team would have believed in themselves the way this one did. Junior Sherrill took one to the house. He's had a kind of a tough season at the receiver spot, and he housed special teams, man. It just went to the house, man. Start the game. You're just like, okay, here we go. This is gonna be a fun one right here. And so, those kind of things give you a little bit of confidence, right? And they have to, because you walk out of that game. You walk out of the game with against LSU. Yeah, you're disappointed in the loss. Yeah, I'm fully with you, because Vandy was very much in both of those games, and it is disappointing. But when you kind of take a step back and you look at it and you say, okay, what are the things that are going to propel us into bowl season? What are the things that we can lean on and say, okay, well, we've got this and we've got confidence in this. Now we just need to go in and say, okay, we need to shore up this and this and this, be ready for whatever bowl matchup we have, which we'll talk about that throughout the course of the week, what projections are looking like, and kind of looking at who the possible opponents could be. So, but when you look at how Vandy has started in most of these games, you look at it and say, okay, well, if they can continue to start like that, the defense will eventually catch up, right? The offense will figure some things out. And I think the offense does have a lot of things to figure out. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But dream start, which is a lot. That goes into a lot. That's a really big indicator of, how good your team could be. Now you got to finish those off, which Vandy has not been able to do in the last 3 weeks. But you've had 2 dream starts, one on the road at LSU and one against a playoff team in Tennessee. That's a home game, and you have to be encouraged by that, and you have to be encouraged by the fight, because Tennessee could have blown Vandy right out of the water starting in the second half. They had every chance to, and they didn't. I don't know if they took their foot off the gas. I don't know what it was, but they could have made that a 4-touchdown game very easily. All right. But they didn't. Vandy hung in there. They took their best shots, and they counterpunched, but just a little too late on the counterpunches, and Tennessee was able to hold them off. But again, you can't get pressure on the quarterback. You kind of get away from what's working a little bit. Those are the kind of things that take a dream start and really kind of derail it. We'll talk about that next. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I bet my man Adam Gregory placed a $5 bet as his first bet on FanDuel to take Tennessee plus 10.5, and he probably won that. He's probably very happy about that. So shout out to my man Adam Gregory. Shout out to my man Clarence Wilson, the only UT fans that I really, really like. But that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back. If you are not eating Creve Hall bagels, I don't know what you're eating when you go out to eat in the mornings for breakfast. If you don't make your own breakfast at home and you get it and you treat yourself with some takeout, you should do that with Creve Hall bagel, because the sourdough bagels, man, they're the best bagels around. They're very flavorful, have lots of options. Ben and his staff do such a tremendous job that there's such a demand. They're opening up a second location in East Nashville. That date is to be announced. But if you're not getting Creve Hall bagels, I promise you're missing out, because that is the best bagel in Nashville. And they're good enough, man. They can open up a national chain if they really wanted to. But, again, best bagels around, sourdough bagels. They do it right, man. They do it right. They do it right. They do it right. Creve Hall Bagel Company. You should do it. Right. And you can get gift cards online too. Christmas is right around the corner. So get your loved ones, get whoever in your family, friends, coworkers, whoever. If you're buying gifts, get them a gift card to Creve Hall Bagel. They will not regret that. I promise you. And it will take any person that's not quite into bagels and make them into bagels. That was me. Wasn't quite into bagels before I had Creve Hall Bagels. And man, I'm hooked now. It's the only bagel I'll eat, because regular bagels don't do it for me. But a Creve Hall bagel, sourdough bagel, has a lot of flavor to it. Can't go wrong there. But anyway, also, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. If you need a second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job. The SEC squad shows, they're not going away. So make sure you check that out. They're definitely not going away. Those squad shows are fun. Basketball season is going to be even more fun, because if you thought the SEC was drunk when it came to football, wait till you get to basketball season. This is going to be upside down, right side up, upside down, inside out. I'm going to show you folks what it's all about. So anyway, check out that as well. So we're looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? The main part of the bad, I think, was the offensive game plan going into this game. We talked about the good, which was the start. You get off to a dream start. You're running the ball well. Special teams is playing well. Your defense is they're doing some things to get takeaways. They're doing some things to cause Tennessee to have to drive and grind and earn their touchdowns, and they're making it difficult on Nico, and they're doing everything that you can, right? They're doing this a little bit. They're eliminating pre-snap space, and all of a sudden, I think there's some things offensively that, and it's probably because of a limitation in the passing game. I know that Diego Pavia is limited in his downfield accuracy. We knew that coming into the season. We knew he's a fighter. He's a resilient guy. He's tough. He can run. He's good at short to intermediate accuracy. He can make off-platform throws. He's a freaking warrior, right? Probably one of the best things to happen to Vandy in quite some time. But needless to say, Tennessee knows that. And teams started to kind of pick up on, okay, Tennessee doesn't have a consistent pass game between receivers not being able to get separation and Diego Pavia not being able to push the ball down the field. So Vandy became less and less of a threat vertically, so teams were able to constrict that space. And Tennessee was able to constrict that space. And as the game wore on, I'm sure, and the game plan probably dictated it. The adjustments probably dictated them being able to, them having to get away from the option runs. But then again, when you really looked at it, Tennessee was having trouble. They were having trouble picking up the pitch man. They were having trouble with understanding assignments and kind of figuring out what Pavia wanted to do with the ball. It's like they struggled with it, like a lot of teams struggled with it early on, where they couldn't quite get a bead on, because I think what was giving Tennessee so much fits was that Tim Beck and Jerry Kill were mixing formations up. They were moving a little bit. They were doing some things that they did earlier in the season to give them success when teams started acclimating to their base stuff. But I think too many times down the stretch run of the season, and it showed up again in this game, is Vandy got a little conservative down the stretch. Like it's like they wanted to try to hang on to the ball. It's like they were trying to grasp firmly on the, hey, if we hold this ball for as long as we can, and we're trying to, and instead of just playing to their identity and understanding that Tennessee is just athletically gifted and they're going to get you sometimes, I think that they kind of got away from it and got super, super conservative, which you can't do. Like if you're going to go pedal to the metal, you've got to go pedal to the metal. Like you've got to just, hey, we're not supposed to win this game anyway. Let's play with house money and let's just let it rip, dude. And, I think that kind of attitude is the reason why you beat and finish out Alabama, the reason why you win in Jordan Air Stadium, the reason why you win at night in Kentucky, the reason why you beat Virginia Tech in double overtime when no one in the world thinks you're going to win that game. All of that stuff happens because you're aggressive, because your quarterback just throws all caution to the wind and says, hey, I'm going to go get it. Come hell or high water, here it comes, right? I'm going to go get it. And that attitude, I think, waned throughout the course of the season. He's beat up. He can't do quite as much as he usually can. You could tell. But Tennessee also did a really good job of pressuring him and took away a lot of things that he wanted to do. But I think they still, to me, I think if they still move guys around, shift formations, get into some unbalanced looks, go off script some. I think if they still continue with the option run, I think if they still continue to try to press that, I still think Tennessee struggles with that a little bit. And I think that's the thing that brings that brings them down and also takes a little bit of the vertical pressure off, and it creates some easier throws. I think it gives you some space now to where you can actually get your passing game going. And I think that's something that I don't know, like maybe they got away from it too soon. Maybe the game dictated it a lot. I don't know exactly because I'm not on the headsets with them. I wish that I was. That would have been kind of fun. But I don't know what goes into those decisions. If I had a chance to talk to Coach Beck about it, I would love to pick his brain, OC to OC, and just kind of figure out, okay, what's going on in your brain when you kind of shift, some of these focuses, like, hey, on 3rd and 3, you drop back and take your vertical shot there. Why not? You're running the ball with decent effectiveness. Why not do some quarterback lead stuff? Why not do some design quarterback runs where you're leading for Diego Pavia, where he's downhill, right? Where you're not forcing him to run laterally and outrun people to the edge, which he can't do, right? He was never able to do that, really. I think some of it was just by surprise, but get him downhill, like against, forget exactly who it was against, but it was a game where Cedric Alexander had this devastating lead block. They ran to the tight end side. They had 3 receivers away from the tight end, and it was a nub tight end side, and they ran a G lead, like things like that. Like I thought they got away from, because I think they were trying to protect Pavia, or I'm not sure what was the case there, but they just got away from some things that I thought were could have been devastating, could have been really good in the quarterback run game. And you have like Monty Jones back there. You can run some design quarterback lead stuff, and he can plow his way through. He's kind of a bigger back, and he can really make some things happen there. But I think that you have one of your best tools in Diego Pavia, and you're not utilizing them as good as you could. Those quarterback draws were working really, really good. Where some of the screens that worked earlier in the season, like I haven't seen those in a while. Like there's some things that I think I don't know if it's panic or I don't know what dictated it, but I would have loved to seen them get back more into some of the things that they did really well early in the season, put a little bit different look on it, a little bit different appearance on it. And I think that would have hit Tennessee, because Tennessee's super aggressive, hyper aggressive, and that could have taken advantage of some of that. But anyway, we'll talk about a little bit more of the defense and how they were unable to A, cover receivers, and B, get pressure on Nico Iamaleava. Nailed it. And we'll talk about that next. Hey, what time is it? According to my watch, it says it's game time. That's right. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Well, Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff so you can see only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That's right. So if you're looking for a concert, I know in Nashville there's a lot of concerts, especially this time of year, right? I'm sure they have all the great seats. All the curation makes it even easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, whatever you want to go see. All in pricing, you can toggle this feature on, show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, well, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so there's no excuse if you pick a bad seat using Gametime. That's on you. The lowest price guarantee also means that Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better deal. They're challenging you to find a better deal. Well, Gametime ticket coverage also means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. How about that? So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back. It is Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're wrapping up the show here with the good and the bad and the ugly. We're right now in the ugly, okay? We're a little bit into the bad, but some of this last bad, we went with the offensive gameplay, but some of this last bad kind of led into the ugly, so we're going to kind of combine those all together. It's one of those things where, again, you can't. I don't know what to fault here. Okay, I don't know that there's one thing you can look at and say, that's it. That's the thing. Like if it were that simple, you'd have a clearer picture. If it were that simple, someone's probably getting fired if it was that simple. which I don't think anybody's getting fired here. So here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, covering Vol receivers. Couldn't do it. Those guys are good, man. Getting pressure on the QB is kind of a bonus feature here. That's more of a bad, but it led into an ugly. And that's what kind of helped Tennessee put this game out of reach and secure that playoff spot. So secondary getting torched, okay? Love Colby Taylor. Lots of promise. But dude was burnt toast. It was bad. And he was jawing. He was, I'm not sure. I can't sugarcoat that. Again, nothing personal, but Saturday when he was in uniform, he was burnt toast, and Tennessee knew it and they went after him. They knew that was the weak spot. They went after Colby Taylor, and you hate it for him. You hate that anybody struggles and anybody stands out in such a negative way, but it just is what it is, right? And it just, every time you looked up, it was 6 trailing, right? There was one play I think that should have, it was a dropped pass in the end zone, and Taylor was slow-mo. Taylor was burnt. He was trying like mad. I think what it comes down to, and I can see where the promise is. I can see where, I said this the moment he signed on as a transfer from Wyoming. 6'4", worry about his transition from the back pedal. Worry about his transition to man coverage. Lo and behold, boop, he can't flip his hips fast enough. These are SEC receivers. There's some speed. Now, there's speed everywhere, but not like this. And he struggled with that. I knew that was going to happen. He was going to get baptized. Now, that's one thing he could completely work. He can completely come back in the bowl game and say, you know what? I heard you, Corey. I'm going to prove you wrong. And he could come back. He could be MVP of the bowl game, and I would love every second of that, right? I hope that that's the case, right? I hope that he doesn't, spiral and do whatever. But, this is constructive criticism. That's the thing I think that failed him, was his inability to transition his hips when covering. I think he loses a lot of ground that way. He's so tall. He's so long. That's what lanky people do. They have trouble with that. And so it's disappointing, but, he's not the only one. I think Tennessee receivers are running open all day long. I think some of the lack of pressure allowed Nico ages of time to be able to find those guys. I think had there been a little bit more pressure on them, obviously these receivers would have been covered a little bit, but there was a lot of space. I think as the game wore on, I think as you get burned a couple of times, I think there's more space created pre-snap, which led to then, Tennessee getting, I think early on, this was true. They did eliminate pre-snap space. They were able to the better contest space post-snap. But as the game wore on, I think that became less and less evident, because I think the fear of getting burnt was there, and it was very present. And that fear became crippling, and that fear turned into reality, and that reality became that you couldn't cover them deep, you couldn't cover them shallow, you couldn't cover them anywhere, right? The green eggs, it's like the green eggs and ham thing. Like, it's never good enough, right? And so I will not eat them in a car. I will not eat them in a, the whole thing. But it just didn't seem like they could get any pressure. They couldn't close down any space on these Tennessee receivers, and they had their way because they beat them deep vertically a couple of times. That was a masterclass in how to create space for yourself short by taking shots long. Did Nico get burned a couple of times? Yes, he did. He got burnt going deep a couple of times because he threw a couple of picks. Those things are going to happen when you take shots down the field. But what it did was it opened up things short and allowed him to then get in a rhythm. Once he got in a rhythm, dude is freaking on fire. He's a good quarterback. He should be, right? It's just getting him in rhythm, not getting any pressure on him, letting him relax back there. The more comfortable he got, the more deadly he got, the more lethal he got with his throws. He was accurate as hell. He was He was throwing dimes. He was, he stepped up in the pocket. He was moving in the pocket very confidently. I mean, he did everything you needed a quarterback to do in that game because there was no pressure. I think Tennessee created that fear by hitting those big plays. The run game wasn't great. I mean, they started getting chunks later, but that was after Vandy's defense was discombobulated. So I think the defensive game plan, honestly, I think the overall game plan on both sides of the ball, I think the more conservative it got, the worse it got, right? And it shows that against a team like that, if you get them out of rhythm, you cannot let them back in rhythm by going conservative and giving them space. Because if you give them space to be able to relax, they're going to get in a rhythm. That's how Tennessee operates. And for that, I think the error was we didn't get enough pressure on. They're going to say, hey, we didn't get enough pressure on Nico. Well, I mean, again, their offensive line had something to do with that too. I mean, they're beating our 6-man pressures just as easily as they're beating a 3-man pressures. So I get that to some degree, but I think you've got to get more aggressive, closing down space early. Say, okay, beat us deep. You can't beat us deep more than once. Do it again. Beat us deep again. We're going to disguise some things, right? And just got to find ways to create that pressure without having to throw a million bodies at it all the time. But you can create the illusion of pressure, and you can create the illusion of space and taking it away, and you can do some different things. And he was able to do some different things at Notre Dame. But I think, again, we'll talk more about this in a later episode. But just overall, I think this game was a microcosm of just kind of the road of, okay, we've come a long way. We still got a long way to go. And that's just this season just signifies the beginning of their journey where they want to be. So there's a lot of positive, some bumps in the road, obviously, some negative things, some not so great things, some giant potholes and some minor speed bumps, but some victories along the way and some smooth roads along the way. So you just got to take the good with the bad and the bad with the good and just kind of move on into bowl season. Try to shore those things up as best possible. Get yourself in the best position to create yourself some success in 2025. But the regular season is over. 6-6, a season nobody ever thought in a million years would happen with the way last year went. But here we are, looking positive to a bowl game. We'll talk about those possibilities. We'll kind of do a little bit more overall recap on the season, talk recruiting, talk some transfer portal stuff. I'm sure some of that news is going to come out. I'm sure there's going to be some coaching news that affects Vandy in some capacity along the way as well. All of that, and maybe even sneak in a little basketball talk. But until then, we'll see you on the next time at on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down. Peace.